At the start of World War I, the aeroplane was so new that the British had not used it in battle before.
I am a hunter. When I have shot down an Englishman, my hunting passion is satisfied. For just a quarter of an hour.
Young British pilots found themselves up against the Red Baron and the German hunting squadrons. To survive, they raced to turn their flimsy biplanes into deadly fighting machines and created a new and terrifying form of warfare. Now, two modern-day fighter pilots will face the same challenges as the pilots of World War I.
It's almost impossible!
Their aim, to find out how those heroic young men devised all the principles of aerial warfare in just 4 years. Principles that cost the blood and lives of thousands. At the start of World War I, eager recruits, some as young as 17, rushed to join the Army's new aircraft service, called the Royal Flying Corps. Cecil Lewis was typical. He had just left school when he took his first solo flight.
I should have all this excitement to myself.
The British weren't alone in the skies. The Germans were up there too, taking photographs. But neither side worried about the other, as aeroplanes weren't armed.
There's a notion of World War I air fighting that's almost gentlemanly. I mean, when they first arrived in France in 1914, literally German and British aircraft are flying past and waving at each other.
It didn't take long before they realised they really ought to be doing something to try and prevent the other side doing what they were doing.
I spotted a strange aircraft, so I saddled up to him and saw he was a Hun. I got my shotgun out and fired it all away. Then I got my revolver, and we had a revolver battle up there. We were very close to each other, and I could see him quite well. I finished my 6 shots, and he had finished his. We both waved each other goodbye and set off.
But war in the air was not to remain so gentlemanly.
Okay, there you go.
Within weeks, pistols were abandoned in favour of machine guns. Firing hundreds of rounds a minute, you had a much better chance of hitting your opponent. But the downside was, you might also shoot off your own wings.
The Englishman tried to catch me up in the rear, while I tried to get behind him. Soon I discovered that I was not meeting a beginner. He had not the slightest intention to break off the fight. The gallant fellow was full of pluck, and when we had got down to 3,000 feet, he merrily waved to me as if he would say, "Well, how do you do?" But by and by, the thing became a little too hot for him. I followed him at an altitude from 2,500 to 150 feet, firing all the time. My opponent fell, shot through the head, 150 feet behind our line.
The Englishman was Lano Hawker, VC, the best Royal Flying Corps pilot at the time. His death confirmed what British pilots already feared. They were outgunned and outperformed by Richthofen and the German squadrons. The shell misses.
That looks like Bravo 2. Train right, 1 degree. Elevate, 5. Set.
This will be Andy's last chance. He's just 1 minute of fuel left. A direct hit. Andy signals back the letters OK.
Target hit. Well done, fellas. Right, let's keep firing on the same spot. Keep at it. Let's have some more.
The fighters were to be flown by a new squadron of carefully hand-picked pilots and promising new recruits. The squadron's number was 56, and it would pioneer the next leap forward in aerial tactics and strategy. Personally responsible for the selection of crew was an Australian, Major Richard Blomfield. One of the talented young pilots was young Lieutenant Cecil Lewis.
Efficiency was Blomfield's watchword. He had all his pilots out for a run before breakfast, kept them busy around the sheds all day, and turned them loose in town at night. They had to be tip-top aviators and bring down Hun. Nothing else mattered.
Blomfield was quite a peculiar little man. He would walk everywhere with a cane, pointing at things and directing everything. Control freak springs to mind as well, but I think that's probably why he was such an effective administrator and organiser.
Now, 90 years on, former RAF pilot Andy Offer will test this World War I biplane. This is the SE-5.
Oh my goodness.
The fighter aircraft that in 1917 the British hoped would bring down the Red Baron. Andy's going to fly it. What does he look for in a fighter?
You want a big engine, a lot of power, which is going to help with a light airframe, nice and manoeuvrable so it can turn, and you want great visibility. The guy who sees first will probably win. This is my ship.
Good luck. You need an aeroplane that's going to be able to, get its weapon system onto that other aeroplane as quick as possible, so you can get in, get out, take the shot, and then move on to something else.
It's got a very flat front, so it's going to be very draggable.
Back in the air, it was a lonely existence, where one constant fear lived in the mind of every pilot. Fire. It could devour an aircraft made of wood and linen in minutes. And there was no escape. Pilots weren't allowed to wear parachutes. High Command believed they would encourage them to bail out. For a pilot crashing, the choice was stark.
The wreck plunged vertically. The others went after him. They could see him, struggling to get clear of his harness, then half standing up, deciding whether to jump. He didn't, and the machine and he was smashed to nothingness. God, imagine his last moments, seeing the ground rush up at him, knowing he was a dead man, unable to move, unable to do anything but wait for it. A parachute would have saved him.
Followed. But when I came out on the other side, he was nowhere to be seen.
Lothar von Richthofen was forced to the ground by Ball and managed to get out of his plane just in time for Albert Ball to come out of a cloud bank upside down. He was too low to the ground to be able to turn over, and he hit the ground round about here. Didn't die straight away, but lived long enough for a local girl to run onto the scene. She pulled him out of his aircraft, and he literally breathed for a few more seconds, opened his eyes once, and then he died here.
All next day, a feeling of depression hung over the squadron. We mooned about the sheds, still hoping for news. The day after that, hope was given up.
Albert Ball was posthumously awarded the VC. When he died, he had 67 victories, second only to the Red Baron. And a more accomplished pilot.
They come across Werner Voss by accident, and after that follows apparently 10 to 15 minutes of the best display of aerial fighting that could have been seen at that point. Voss is said to have been amazing. He manages to evade 6, 7 pilots at one time, and they said he looked invincible.
At one point, Voss's plane was at the apex of a cone of bullets from 10 machine guns.
And they were simply unable to shoot this man down because he was turning so quickly. He was carrying out manoeuvres that they, and this included some of the greatest British pilots, people like James McCudden, manoeuvres that they had never seen before.
Eventually, the young pilot Arthur Rhys-Davids got on Voss's tail.
Obviously, it's impossible to pinpoint with accuracy exactly whose bullets hit who and who was responsible for downing Voss, but it's believed that it was Rhys-Davids. He managed to get on Voss's tail, and Voss began flying in a straight line, which he hadn't yet done, and Rhys-Davids followed him down, apparently so close that the tip of his propeller was almost touching the rudder of Voss's plane.
Voss was downed by the future. A future that 56 Squadron had ruthlessly demonstrated now lay in teamwork, minimising risk, and supporting each other through tactics.
Everybody was talking about the Voss.
At the start of World War I, the aeroplane was so new that the British had not used it in battle before.
I am a hunter. When I have shut down an Englishman, my hunting passion is satisfied. For just a quarter of an hour.
Young British pilots found themselves up against the Red Baron and the German hunting squadrons. To survive, they raced to turn their flimsy biplanes into deadly fighting machines and created a new and terrifying form of warfare. Now, 2 modern-day fighter pilots will face the same challenges as the pilots of World War I.
It's almost impossible!
Their aim, to find out how those heroic young men devised all the principles of aerial warfare in just 4 years. Principles that cost the blood and lives of thousands.